In July, 47788 brings in the stock to work Hertfordshire Rail Tour's Lincolnshire Imp. Alongside is Rail Freight's unique German liveried loco 90029, Frachtverbundingen, substituting for a failed Class 91 on the 1110 King's Cross to Leeds. During the spring, the King's Cross to Ketton cement working was hauled by a pair of Class 31s rather than a 58. This came about due to the increase in freight traffic. EWS found they were short of Type 5s, and this was a service which could be worked by lesser powered machines, giving the 31s their first booked freight working for many years. Next is the unique load haul liveried Class 122 bubble car on a route learning duty. Heading cross country is the 1034 Leeds to Felixstowe Freightliner. Heading for the Wisbeach branch is the Pedigree Crompton, a November Pathfinder rail tour featuring Cambrian Railways 33103. This line normally only sees 5 trains a week carrying pet food to Scotland. The tour then regained the main line and headed north to King's Lynn. Here it was routed onto the short Middleton Towers branch, which since 1968 has only seen freight traffic. In the background is the remains of the former Midland and Great Northern line to Yarmouth, which shut in 1959. The Middleton Towers branch itself used to be part of a passenger line to Norwich, but nowadays is used by 4 trains a week carrying industrial sand to the glass-making plants at Worksop and Barnby Dun. Heading through the semaphore oasis of Lincoln in January is the 0945 Langley to Lindsay empty oil tanks. Heading in the opposite direction is the final Class 31 rail tour and organised by A1A Charters. This was the Long Goodbye, which had run from Blackpool to Cleethorpes via Manchester. It is seen here on the return journey running via Birmingham. Next we'll look at the lines emanating from Liverpool Street, starting with a visit to Stratford, where 56135 works the 0959 Ripple Lane to Immingham empty newsprint, which will be followed by a pair of DRS 37s. These 37s had been hired by a Freightliner to work some of their services to Felixstowe and Ripple Lane, while some of their 47s were taken out of use to be upgraded to 57s. Next, 47283 heads for Wembley with some Freightliner flats. The 728 Lawley Street to Felixstowe. At 2 hours and 8 minutes, D9000 broke the record for the fastest time between London and Yarmouth on this special working in August, seen at Shenfield. On October 4th, the Braintree branch celebrated its 150th anniversary. Ilford Depot's Preserve Class 306 provided a shuttle service to the main line at Whittam. These 1949-built units worked suburban services out of Liverpool Street. Originally built to operate at 1500 volts DC, they were subsequently converted to 25,000 volts AC before finally being withdrawn in 1981. Outside, restored vehicles provided a static display, whilst an open-top double-decker provided rain-soaked rides through the town. Back on the main line, services to Norwich are in the hands of 86s. Marks Tay is also the junction for the Sudbury branch. Class 121 bubble cars were in operation during the winter 97-98 timetable. At Chapel and Wakes Colne, the station is shared with the East Anglia Railway Museum. After many complaints of unreliability, a Class 153 was reinstated which had become available once the preserved Hastings Demu had been hired to work some Norfolk rush hour services. This is the 1658 Norwich to Yarmouth. This was the last summer for through loco hauled workings to Yarmouth. The Class 86, used on the electrified London to Norwich section, was retained in the formation and will be seen at the back of this return working. These services will be replaced by Class 170s next year. And now on to the LTS. To provide an interchange with the Jubilee Line extension, West Ham is having a platform reinstated on the main line in exactly the same position as the one originally shut in 1940. Joining the Tilbury line west of Barking is an engineer's train from Temple Mills. Class 302s officially bowed out on July 4th, having served the line for 40 years. No visit to the area would be complete without a ride on the Southend Pier Railway. At 1¼ miles, it is the world's longest pier, opening in 1829, during which time it has caught fire twice. The current trains are the third generation to operate this line and are diesel operated, the previous two being electric. This is the North Station with a train about to depart. We'll now take a stroll down the pier. In years gone by, boat excursions were provided from here to Sheerness, on the other side of the Thames. The Grand Terminus of St Pancras was designed by W.H. Barlow and opened in 1868. Outside, the Midland Grand Hotel was opened in 1876 and was designed by Sir George Gilbert Scott. During one Sunday in September, the doors to part of this were specially opened to the public. This was the entrance hall. A walk down this main corridor brings you to the coffee lounge. And further down the corridor is the grand staircase. The hotel closed in 1935 as it was too expensive to run and refurbish. It was subsequently used as railway offices, but finally closed in the 1980s, having failed its fire safety certificate. The final room on display was the ladies' drawing and dining room. Now a look at freight on the southern end of the Midland Main Line, starting with 60039 heading the 1045 Forders to Cricklewood bin liner. Next, the 1013 Bow to Croft. The same service again, this time worked by a load haul 60. Stone traffic predominates. This 58 is heading for Mount Sorrel. Shortly afterwards, the 0945 Langley to Lindsay tanks is about to be passed by the Cricklewood bin liner, this time hauled by a 58. More variety for the bin liner now, as brand new 66017 takes charge. To provide a better connection to the airport, Luton is having a second station built. Meanwhile, to cope with the additional services resulting from the introduction of Class 170s next year, Bedford is having an additional platform built. Unusual haulage for the Cricklewood bin liner in October as 231s take charge. The Marston Vale line runs from here to Bletchley and is worked by Class 117s plus the bubble cars displaced from the Sudbury branch. During October, some services were worked by Fragonset 31s. This week-long operation enabled repairs to be made to the DMUs, which by this time had become too unreliable. At Bletchley, we connect with the West Coast Main Line, where unusually an intercity liveried 86 hauls the 1053 Halewood to Dagenham Car Component Service. Equally unusual is the 1439 Euston to Warrington empty mail vans hauled by Rail Freight's 90021. The single-track Watford to St Albans branch was electrified in 1988. Surprisingly, sprinters are to be introduced onto this line next year. On the main line, 56079 heads a special working north from Willesden MG Gas. This will be followed by 90132 with the 1048 Trafford Park to Wembley. This is the 1558 Willesden to Plymouth mail vans on the City line, which connects the West Coast main line to the West London line. It is being propelled by 47755 and controlled by one of the new unpowered propelling control vehicles. After reversing, we will see it again heading through the high level station towards Acton Wells Junction and the Great Western. Heading for Temple Mills is Intercity liveried 37685 with the 1355 from Hoo Junction. And now a look at the often ignored Gospel Oak to Barking line. This mainly sees Class 117 DMUs, and here one passes the seldom used connection to the Midland Main Line. Heading for Cricklewood is a Res 47 with an engineer's train from Temple Mills. Pockets of semaphore signalling can still be found provided you explore. The most interesting station is South Tottenham, which has a signal box built on one of its platforms. 47796 heads for Temple Mills with the Serco track test train from Willesden. As a 117 heads for Barking, a Central Line service formed of 92 stock passes underneath. Here, the Gospel Oak line, which is on the left, is joined by a connection from the Great Eastern Main Line, which in this shot is being used by 37379 on an engineer's train.